The Tigers tried to hand the Guardians the game on Wednesday night. The Guardians just didn't take it. Luckily for us, the draft is 4 days away. We're talking college hitting targets, 36-48, college pitching targets on the same range, and more draft strategy to get you ready for Sunday.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the show today. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Guardians your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. And this episode of Locked On Guardians is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah! The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. Hello and welcome to the show today. If you are tuning in, you can see my Father's Day hat finally came in. I want to thank all of you again for joining us. Shout out everydayers like David Lane, always being kind in the comments, or Zeev, whose name I probably got wrong. But enough of that. I'm Jeff Ellis, one of your two co-hosts here of Locked On Guardians. Before that, I was a national draft and prospect analyst at Stylist 24/7, as well as your 33rd favorite blogger at every Cleveland sports blog that has or ever will exist.
Jeff, you're number one on my list, especially on your birthday today. Happy birthday. I am Justin Latta. I have been covering the Guardians minor league system since 2007. You might have read me at Guardians Baseball Insider, the News Herald, the Morning Journal, among other many places. And this is Locked On Guardians, your daily Cleveland Guardians podcast. And we're going to get into the Guardians' loss to Detroit, but we're going to focus a lot today on Guardians hitting targets at 36 and 48, pitching targets, both in the college range. So we're going to get you ready for the draft on Sunday. The Guardians will pick number 1, number 36, 48. They pick 84s on day 2, right? Am I right?
Yes. Yeah. It's
48's day 1. So they have 3 picks on day 1.
Day 1 ends with the Ohtani comp pick. That's how we end day 1 of the draft, which is everyone remembering the Angels. Like, as much as people complain about the Guardians of being cheap, like the ultimate cheap
We're not
move
the Angels. We're going to talk about a very cheap draft team here in a second, because we're going to talk about draft strategy later in the show. So we're going to talk about one team that really was cheap in the draft and why the Guardians could do better than them. This was a great draft by that team. The Guardians could repeat it and do better because they're not
terrible.
Cheap. How about that?
That
was a terrible draft.
Well, for this team, they were just jerks. Like, they were straight out. They were straight out jerks.
Yeah,
so,
it was bad.
Enough of that. Let's talk about this game that the Tigers tried to wrap. Speaking of birthdays, they tried to give a birthday gift. They tried to wrap this up and hand it to him by running into outs, by wild pitches. There's a lot of things you could complain about. You can complain about the pin. Personally, at this point in time, I'm not pinch hitting Daniel Schneemann for Tyler Freeman. That's my complaint. Sam Henches. Yes. Schnee stays. The Schnee stays. And then, like, you and I were both about, like, why was the plan to have Arias run there? Like, you don't need to run into the out.
Yeah, I couldn't figure that one out. Why because I mean, I know hindsight's 2020, but Arias would have scored on the wild pitch. But you know what? It didn't matter because Sam Henches a lot of home runs, so that sac fly by Jimenez should have tied the game. Bybee struggled early. He settled in later. He still got him 7 innings, so I can't really fault him too much. 4 runs. 4 runs is the magic number. They did score 4 at the end, but okay, so I guess, I don't know. Whatever.
I want to throw this out to anyone who's good with numbers on our listener base, a project for our listeners. I was texting Justin, how many times has a starter this year gone to 100 pitches? Can you find all the games? I don't want to go through game logs. So do the work for me and tell me how many times you've had because for a guy who struggled, it's kind of amazing. He came back, went 7 innings, right? And threw over 100 pitches. We have not had a lot of starters go to 100 pitches, and I can't name.
No, and that was a career high, 109 for him. And votes after the game, they need him to go 7. So the early struggles came back to bite them, unfortunately, for him, because they did score the magic 4, but sometimes that's not enough, and the bullpen gave up a run. And Sam Henches, my wife's favorite player on the team, I made sure to rub that in her face that her favorite player blew the game for them. But yeah, the Tigers ran into outs on the bases. They threw wild pitches. They walked batters. And the home plate umpire tried to help them not walk a batter. And then Alex Fado, who I hated at Florida, not as a person, but as a pitcher,
I loved him. I was big on Fado.
Did not.
That's one of my
never was a big fan, and the home plate umpire tried to help him not walk David Fry, but he still did. They had opportunities, and they had every chance to win this game. They just didn't come through with the big hit. It just seems to be, again, the theme is that
that's been the theme of late. Like that's what happens. Like everyone wanted to talk about and got mad about hitting, but it's like it comes in waves. That's the way
the
this
runners
hitting
in
goes.
scoring
It
position
comes in waves.
That's what happens. They were 1 for 5 with runners in scoring position on Wednesday night. Yeah. And if you go 2 for 5, you win the game. Like that's just what it is. So that's it goes in cycles there. I'm not really like too worried about it, but it is frustrating, I will say, because they have struggled with the White Sox. They have struggled with Detroit. These are the 2 worst teams in the division. They've had no problem with the Twins, so they haven't seen in a while. And you're going to see Detroit at the end of July twice, wrapped around a Philadelphia series. So that's going to be tough. So at some point this year, they have to figure out if they're going to win this division, if they're going to go to the playoffs, they're going to have to figure out how to beat Detroit and Chicago, because you can't go into the last month of the year struggling against 2 of the worst teams in your division. I know there's always that one team every year you struggle with, especially in your division, even they're terrible, but you're not going to be able to go into the second half of the year and be like, all right, we can't beat the Tigers and the White Sox. It's just for some reason we can't do it. That's not going to hold up. You're going to have to win those games at some point.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't have too much to add to it. It's you made the statement. I mean, I guess I can get spicy because people like that yesterday. No, you're wrong. I'm out.
People did like the spice. Yeah. So spicy. Jeff just left the chat. All right. Bye, Jeff. Enjoy your birthday. Not talking to me. People really did not like my bullpen argument yesterday, which that's fine. And let me clarify the comment. Like I said, no trading for Andrew Millers. And if there is a resource issue here, like it would be a really silly comment, a really silly decision to make. But let's say for whatever reason, Cleveland felt like we don't have enough prospects we want to trade, or maybe it's a payroll thing. I don't know. I don't know. If it comes down to we can only trade for 2 players and one, okay, so one has to be a starter and a hitter. Like, I'm not saying prioritize bullpen over starting pitching, but I'm saying they should go get a bullpen guy no matter what. They should if they absolutely can. And I saw the comment too saying starting pitching dominates in the postseason. Yeah, if you have great starting pitching in the postseason, that goes a long way, absolutely. But go back to the 2016 playoffs. And I know the Royals had good starting pitching in 2015, but way better than this. Everybody had better than this. But you no matter who you go get on the market, I'm just saying you're not going to get a great starter. Like Yusei Kikuchi is probably the guy you're talking about, right? And which, by the way, there was an article on MLB.com today from Mark Feinsand saying that the Blue Jays people are hearing the Blue Jays are willing to deal their rentals. So that doesn't mean Chad Green, because he's not a rental and he makes a lot of money next year. So yeah, Chad Green might be off my list now.
Yeah.
So go to Texas for that. But Yusei Kikuchi's on that list.
David Robertson. I kind of got in line with that idea.
Yeah. If you go get Kikuchi, I would still go get a reliever because, again, even Tanner, Gavin, Ben Lively, Yusei Kikuchi, you do not want those guys going through an order a third time in the playoffs. I don't want to get to the 6th inning and, one of those guys has to face Adley Rutschman for a third time or Aaron Judge for a third time. No, bring in the bullpen. The bullpen is where is going to win you games. Look how many years have we seen for now teams are leveraging the bullpen in the postseason more and more. The rotation in 2016 was arguably better than this, even without Carrasco and Salazar. You still had a decent Josh Tomlin. You had a great Corey
Tomlin
Kluber.
Was not. Tomlin didn't even really pitch in that postseason.
Tomlin, yeah, he did. Tomlin was their second best pitcher in that postseason in 2016.
Oh my goodness, that was such a bad postseason.
It was literally Kluber,
you had
Tomlin,
Bauer.
And then, yeah.
That
was it. That was all you had, and Ryan Merritt. So for one game, so Tomlin would fit right into this rotation right now. So you might have one guy who can go 6 innings. And maybe Gavin's the second guy. Maybe.
I don't know. Like for me, it's one of those things that's just got to be cheap. Like, I'm okay with, again, David Robertson, who's 39 years old, has playoff experience, because what is Texas going to ask for that guy? It's like, that's the point where you're maybe able to flip a lower end player, clear up some depth issues.
Cleveland traded Bob Wickman the 1 year for Michael, or was it Max Ramirez.
Yeah, Max Ramirez, the catcher, or like was it Marshall McDonald?
Lofton a year later.
Yeah. Wasn't Marshall McDonald the guy for Ronaldo Rincon, right? Wasn't that who they got?
Yeah.
So that level.
That's the kind.
So I will say, like, relievers have gotten more expensive since then. That is the counter of it. So
because people see the value.
Yes,
people see the value.
But here's my thing.
You
I
need
still
a deep
I
bullpen.
want to focus on a pitcher and a hitter, and then hey, the bullpen. That's the dessert. We've got my
It's
appetizer and my
it's a
main dish.
luxury.
That's
Yeah,
that's the dessert there. If you can get the
I
other two
agree.
taken care of.
It's not above those two priority wise. But I will say again, if starting pitching is too expensive on the trade market as far as prospects are concerned, then you should be going to get a reliever. If they say, sorry, Matt Boyd, and it would not be good if they did this. I'm not saying they should, but if you say Matt Boyd and Spencer Howard, who's starting on Thursday, we'll see how that goes. If you say you can't get Yusei Kikuchi, you better get a reliever because you got to get some pitcher because this is not going to hold up through the whole year and it's not going to hold up in the postseason. All right, enough about more trades, enough about Wednesday's disappointing loss that should have been a win. We have to get into our favorite college hitter targets for 36 and 48 on day one, as well as our favorite college pitchers. Here's a spoiler alert. There's a lot more pitchers that we like, which I am kind of surprised by at this point, but we'll talk about that, more strategy coming up on the rest of today's Locked On Guardians.
It's a solo shot. I'd be like, hey, Justin, do you know what I got outside my door today? And I would be like, you'd be like, no. And I'd be like, a Stitch Fix box, because my wife absolutely loves this, as she has told me multiple times. The thing about Stitch Fix is it doesn't matter. They even have Stitch Fix kids, adult, kid, anyone, boy, girl, doesn't matter. They're going to help you redo your wardrobe. Do you not have time? None of us have time. The minute this podcast gets done, I got to go record 9 more videos. So what is the number one thing? Finding ways to save time. Stitch Fix is going to make you look good, and they're going to save you time. It's style that makes you feel as good as you look. Now's the best time to get started at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $100 off. That's $25 off your first 4 fixes for a limited time. I got to tell my wife they've upped the deal because this is a good one. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $100 off. Stitchfix.com/MLB. Must redeem within 7 days of sign up. Offer does not include kids' fixes. Here on Locked On Guardians, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team, whether it's the offseason, the draft, especially the draft, spring training, or the playoffs. It's year round. You know what else is year round? Collection season. Feels wrong saying that, Happy. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Expert USA go to bat for you. A few years ago, I got a tax bill because I was living in one city and they were able to charge me for the overage on taxes from where I worked. And I didn't know this. And I had to sit down and prove to them that I'd only lived in that city for a year or two. It was a big mess. And eventually I got through and I had to pay a bunch of back taxes. And it was not fun, let me tell you. But that was, it's what you never know. And with over 14 years of experience and A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters, require planning, or finally hit that parlay this season, need help filing correctly, call 1-800-549 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon and make sure to mention the Locked On Guardians at checkout and you'll receive a $250 discount off their services.
Do not listen to the national networks. I turned on, not a national, it was a big local network on Wednesday afternoon, and I regretted it. You know why? Because they talked about showcasing, and my eyes rolled back in my head so far, I felt like The Undertaker. If that is something that bugs you, check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories, not all the screaming and all the terrible opinions, because they have local hosts that know your team and they have good opinion. Well, good opinions might be subjective. Who knows? But they do know your team a little bit better than all that stuff. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Coming to your team next year, Jeff. College hitters that we like. So we've talked a lot about Weatherholt and Bazana and Condon. I don't know. I'm still Weatherholt for sure. Weatherholt, Bazana is almost 50-50 and everybody else is after. But now we're talking, who could the Guardians go after at 36 and 48? We got some names we want to talk about in college hitting. You want to talk about names or do you want to talk about the strategy of this? Because the strategy of this makes tons of sense to me based off of history. What do you want to go with first? Do you want to go with strategy or the names?
Let's go with the names.
Well, you and I, Peyton Stovall is a Arkansas second baseman, famous high school kid. I was surprised he made it to campus. Was that 20 or 21? It was 21.
It was
right?
21. This is a third
I was
year,
surprised he made it to campus. Good chase rate, solid chase rate, solid contact rate. Probably not a lot of exciting juice in the bat, but the data is good there. And teams have always liked him. He can hit, left-handed hitting second baseman. Probably not going to give you a ton of value in terms of defense, but it's a solid bat. And if you take one of those guys and you say they're doing so good right now with CJ Kafis and Cooper England, Alex Mooney, and you work on the pull fly ball thing, I think Stovall's got a good swing for that already. So he's a good pick there. And next guy is Sean Keys. You and I talked about Sean Keys a little bit before. We love Sean Keys.
So Sean Keys is an incredibly smart player. He excelled in the Cape, which is the important thing. Because at Bucknell, let's be honest, he wasn't facing the highest level of competition. He is a guy who was all green and batted ball data. And when we found additional data for him, it's really interesting that he is not properly using pull side. And I don't mean like hanging out at the pool. I mean pulling the ball. He doesn't do it enough. For a guy with as big and strong as he is, there's a chance you could find some more power there. And yeah, I think it's just he's a guy who you look at all the little parts as a cold weather bat, big, strong kid, performance with wood bats, and then the ability to maybe unlock more. And the other thing with Sean Keys is he's not really a second round pick. I mean, I put a grade on him that's like late second, early third. But if you're looking to, I was talking about this with Justin off air, instead of paying down with the first overall pick, let's say like there's a world where Bazana wants 9.5 or Kana wants 9.5 and Weatherholt's willing to take 8.5, you're saving $1 million. I would much rather save that $1 million in round 2 and take someone like Sean Keys, who might be more of a third round talent than a second round talent, but take that money savings from that pick instead of the first overall pick.
Yeah, some other notes too on Sean Keys too. Apparently a really good swimmer, so he's a good athlete.
Yes.
The Cape data is really good.
Mechanical engineer.
Yeah, really smart and a really good athlete. So that's always something fun to bet on. And he might end up being a first baseman because he's a very big dude too.
He's gonna be a first baseman. He's gonna be a first.
Yeah, there's your red flag. Some of the data we saw out there, and I want to give the guy credit because the stuff has been great when he's been doing it. It's Antonio Urquides, who looks like he works for the University of Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
So cool there. He's been putting that data out. Looks like he might be a little passive if you kind of look at some of the cards that guy's putting out. 38th percentile in zone swing, so that would tell you that he is probably not swinging a lot. But like Jeff said, a lot of green, hits the ball hard, doesn't chase, makes a lot of contact. Still a very fun player. Definitely contact. Someone, something you can definitely underslot him early on and save some money if you decide not to go crazy on the savings at one. We got Corey Collins on the list, Cole Mathis still in Dre Lane, Kevin Bazell, Mike Sirota. I'll let Jeff talk about Corey Collins really quick, even though we've kind of talked about a couple of these guys before.
Yeah, Collins is old. Let's just be honest. He was a 2020 high school kid, and he struggled with health, and he struggled with the fact that Georgia was kind of a mess for his early years. He was a top 100 prospect that year for the draft, and it took him a while. And I think one of the things that really stood out to me is he had a huge walk rate this year, and walk rates don't translate. So why is that important? It's because he had Condon hitting behind him, which teams would go out of their way to not walk him. Right? You don't. Collins was great. He led the league. He led the NCAA and on base most of the year, but he had a good eye at the plate. Contact is fine, but he's good exit velocities. He hasn't caught in forever. I don't think he's ever going to go back to catch him. But you're buying on the guy's hitter potential, which has been there, and he's a senior, so he's also a cheaper guy in this range.
And then Cole Mathis, we've had on the show before too. You can go back and listen to that interview. We were grateful to have him. You and I are all in on Cole Mathis. I hope Cleveland walks away with him somewhere. I don't even care about the money with him. I don't think he's going to cost a ton of money, but we know he kind of went through an injury this year at some point, and the data still came back really good on him. And he's athletic enough to pitch. He may not have to play first base. We're not really sure where the defense is, but he already does the thing Cleveland loves. He pulls fly balls like crazy. And he dominated the Cape. He walks. He has all the data is really strong for Cole Mathis. I'm going to be really disappointed. And then his dad played for the Indians and Miners, as we had him on the show. So I'm going to be really disappointed if Cleveland walks away without Cole Mathis. I am, as the phrase is, pounding the table for your guy. I think I want to pound the table for Cole Mathis at some point in this draft. I love Dylan Drayling. I know the chase rate's iffy, the contact rate maybe not great. He could do it. He could stand to pull the ball a little bit more, but I like the hands. I like the swing. I think he can get the ball.
Sorry,
in
his
the air.
dad
He's
was
a left fielder
pitcher.
only.
Pitcher, I got
He's
that
a
wrong.
pitcher. Okay, I know he played
Sammy
for
Mathis.
the Indians, the minors.
Sammy
Yeah.
Mathis.
Sammy Mathis, yeah. So we had him on the show. Go look at that. He was awesome. I really want Cole Mathis. Drayling, I like a lot. Kevin Bizzell is I don't know if he's a catcher. I'm not sure, but again, it's the bat you want. And the only question with Bizzell is he going to catch? And there's maybe not a lot of juice in the bat, but it's contact, and it's a good chase rate. Maybe he's Cooper Ingle. Maybe that's another Cooper Ingle right there. They teach him to pull the ball in the air a little bit more, maximize that. These are all, again, 36, 48 targets. You're talking about Corey Collins. To me, Corey Collins feels more like a 48 than a 36.
Yes. No, my guys are more 48s. I think Stovall's more 48. I even think Mathis is more 48. Drayling.
I think all these guys,
except for Bizzell. I think Bizzell is 36. I think Bizzell might not even be there at 36, if I'm being honest.
I agree. Sirota, if someone really buys the Cape data from a year ago, if they say we don't, and Sirota again makes sense because Cleveland has time and time again overlooked bad draft years, and when they went back to sophomore years and they relied on the Cape data. What you said off the air, Jeff, made a lot of sense. What did you say about Mathis and Sirota off the air? Like, if Cleveland is who they are.
So if Cleveland is buying full in on Cape data, which we've seen in the past, like then one of those guys, if not both of them, should be like targets at 36 or 48. Like there's a world where like if you're buying hard on Cape data, and these were two of the top Cape performers, then your draft is probably, if you're all in on the Cape, your draft goes Bazana, Mathis, Sirota. I think there's a world where there's a bigger risk of Mathis not getting there than Sirota.
Agreed.
So like that's your pick. And then you know what? If that was their draft, they would have all of the money to spend on J2 because all of those picks might be slightly under slot. So then you could just go into day 2 and you could buy whoever's it could be like when the Rangers went out and got Brock Porter and spent like $4 million on day 2. I don't think they could. Well, they might be able to spend $4 million on day 2 after those picks. I don't know.
They could. They should have some money to spend no matter what after the first round. We're going to reference another team's draft that went really well, even if they were jerks about how they went about it later in the draft. But it's a blueprint for the Guardians to follow this year, and still taking their guy. It's one we hope they follow. We'll talk about who that is on the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. Today's episode is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. Summer travel, heating up. Go to the Home Run Derby. Watch Jose Ramirez. Go to Texas. Get a hotel room. Travel. Go to the All-Star game. Go to the Futures game. Watch Ralphie Velasquez. Watch Jason Churio. It's going to be a lot of fun. Go to Texas and be there when the Guardians pick Travis Bazana. I talked about before how I got a hotel kind of last minute when it came to, I should have been more prepared going to Cooperstown 2018 for Jim Thomey's induction because should have known as soon as the announcements were made about who got in that those hotels fill up very fast, but it worked out really good for me. I got to stay outside of town. I avoided traffic. I avoided a whole lot of population. And I got a nice scenic drive from Utica into Cooperstown. It was a lot of fun. So if you like that experience, if you want to do that, All-Star Weekend is coming up. And if you want to do that, maybe for the Hall of Fame later this month as well, check out Booking.com. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals, maybe not Detroit. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or the Booking.com app. And you already know I love to get tickets last minute on Game Time. Tickets go down in price on Game Time the closer you get to first pitch. Game Time is the authorized marketplace of Major League Baseball ticket place, and it makes getting tickets faster and easier as well. And if you're someone who likes to plan outings at the last minute too, you can always count on them to have something available for you and a deal. And of course, all in pricing. If you're one of those people who needs to know, and why wouldn't you be? I hate buying anything online and seeing a price and getting the checkout, and all of a sudden it's like 2 times the price and there's weird fees added in. No, when you select your tickets on Game Time, you know the price before checkout. No surprises. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off that first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Day game for the Guardians in Detroit as they wrap up that series. Spencer Howard or Jack Flaherty, dear God. If you can handle it, listen on your Sirius XM app. Just search Guardians. I'll be watching, so we'll see.
It'll go fine, I'm sure.
They'll end up scoring 12 runs because
tomorrow's the day is going to be
that's 12 runs.
How this works.
All right, so before we get into our favorite college hitting targets that are not, pitching targets that are not, Chase Burns or I don't know. There's not a whole lot of them. We like the later college pitchers in this class. Yeah. But there's a draft we should reference, and it's the 2019 Orioles draft. And this is an argument for the Guardians still saving money and drafting Travis Bazzana or Charlie Condon, whatever. Not J.J. Weatherholt. Adley Rutschman was number one in that 2019 class. There was no debate about who was going number one. They could have played games.
There was debate if they were going to play games. There was debate if they'd play games.
Right, but as far as the players concerned, it's not like this year where there's no clear-cut number one. Rutschman was the guy. He was head and shoulders the guy. There really was nobody else unless the Orioles wanted to go cheap, which they went cheap way later, and we'll talk about that. The Orioles still paid $300,000 under slot and got Adley Rutschman, the best player in the draft, picking one overall. And then with their 42nd pick in the second round, the first pick in the second round, they went $600,000 over and change for Gunnar Henderson. That draft right there is a home run. You got two superstars in that draft, and you pretty much didn't have to spend any extra money there. The Guardians are likely going to save more money than $300,000, no matter who they draft at one, whether it's Condon or Bazzana, because Condon supposedly we think is 9.5. We think Bazzana is near there. So you're still saving $1 million. This is the highest slot ever for number one. Guardians can take Condon or Bazzana and still save over $1 million. That's more than what the Orioles saved on Adley Rutschman. And you can use that money the rest of the draft. They only went $600,000 over on Gunnar Henderson. And the rest of the way, they went slot or under. And then on day two, they just decided to say screw you to a lot of players for some reason. And we know the Guardians won't do that because they're going to spend the whole pool. They're going to spend every last dime and then some. That draft was great. The Orioles got Henderson, Rutschman. They got Joey Ortiz, who turned into Corbin Burns. 3 players out of 40 turned into great players. And that's not a high hit rate, but it's enough because you got 2 stars, and one of those guys got you an ace pitcher. And they still went under slot. The Guardians will save more money than that. Still.
And if they hadn't been big old jerk faces, they might have even had a higher hit rate. Because what we're alluding to that you're missing out is on day 3, you could spend up to $125,000 on picks. Cleveland almost always does. I think like Johnny Tincher last year weirdly was like on 15,000 less than the max, but most years, most guys get that max slot. Baltimore decided to go through with each of their players and give 8 guys $1,000, which is just a bit like, because again, that doesn't help you with pool. This isn't like, I can understand to a degree doing that in the 10th round, but when you're doing it in the 18th, 19th round,
that's cheap. Yeah, that's being cheap.
That's being cheap. That's being like cheap. You're not even like, at least give a kid $5,000, at least give a kid $10,000. Like they're gonna have to go out and spend a year, and it's like, I mean, I know you could say, I know people are saying, well, they accepted it. It's like, well, yeah, but like, there's also being a decent human being when you're a $1 billion organization. Like, be a little kind. Is that
nothing over? I think it's 150 now. If anything you spend over 150 goes against your bonus, but your pool. Anything under though, or at 150 doesn't go against your money.
Yeah, which is why, like specifically too, we didn't mention this real quickly. That's why the Brewers did what they did on day 3, which is why they saved their money to day 3, because you already have a 125 base limit. So everything on top of it. So you can sometimes, if Cleveland, I'll just say this now, if Cleveland has a lot of money sitting after day 2, it just means they're weaponizing it for day 3 because you can raise the ceiling even more.
You can. All right. So favorite college pitchers on 36-48. These guys are more 36-48. We talked about Ryan Prager before. That's both of our guy. I think maybe you like Prager a little more than I do. The data there is pretty good. It's a good IVB on the fastball, so 20 inches of vertical break. My guy's Daniel Egan. I think that's probably more of a 48, but you could do 36 with him, and you could give yourself a lot of money to play with there at 48.
I think he's kind of a saver at either one of those spots. The super saver in here is Nick Brink. He's a kid who was smart enough to go to the Ivy League and then had, I think, the 3rd highest strikeout total in the NCAA this year. Senior sign, that would be a huge saver. Like if the savings they want in round 1, they could probably get him at 48 with those. I really like Luke Holman. He's probably got one plus pitch. Same thing with Gage Jump. Maybe same thing with Aiden May and Bryce Cunningham. Like, these are all guys who are kind of more back end guys. Ben Hess is maybe the most talented guy in this group, but he's also had back issues, and that is scary with the pitcher. Like, he's and then Ryan Johnson has probably the best stuff, but he has the weirdest delivery I've ever seen, and he is probably a reliever. Like, I just don't.
Prager from A&M, Daniel Egan's from Presbyterian, it's a small school. Luke Coleman from LSU, Gage Jump. Yeah, I like May a lot. The slider's really good. Everything else has been kind of iffy, but he's had a checkered injury history too. We have Bryce Cunningham on the list too. I think there's been some people trying to link him to Cleveland a little bit.
Well, he was good in the Cape. That's where he started his breakout in the Cape.
Just Vanderbilt pitchers scare the heck out of me. Like,
the last
Vanderbilt pitcher I really liked was Walker Buehler. I haven't really liked anybody since.
Do you know who the last Vanderbilt pitcher was to appear in 61 games in the big leagues?
Jensen Lewis?
No, it's Walker Buehler. It's 2012 Walker Buehler. Because Kyle Wright's at 60 games right now. That's just the arbitrary cutoff. But still, like, that's it. You've had Kyle Wright and Walker Buehler are the only two guys since 2012 that have appeared in 50 games as a starter. It's gone poorly.
Yeah. I don't like any Vanderbilt guys, if I'm being honest with you. There's nobody that really interests me right now. I like Ryan Johnson again. I think he's a reliever. It'd be kind of iffy to do that in the second round. I mean, that's, your Andrew Walters, your Nick Sandlins, I suppose, maybe there. But again, if they really want to spend $9.5 million on Bazan and they say, well, we wish we would have saved that $1 million, then here you go. Daniel Egan and Ryan Johnson can do that for you at 48 or 36.
Just got to be careful to make sure that the one thing we do have to say too is we do have to look and see who went to the combine and who didn't, because if they went to the combine and did medicals, then you have to offer them 75%.
That is true.
Andrew Walters got exactly 75% last year with their Comp B pick, I believe, because that's what happens. If you go to the combine and you do the medical testing, then the team has to offer you 75%. So that just
I'm going to look up if Ryan Forcucci went, because that's a guy I loved coming into the year. Ryan Forcucci did go, so he automatically gets 75%, but still. We think that, maybe there's some health issue. There is health issues for sure. We know on him, and he missed a lot of time this year.
He
loved him coming into the year
for months and months for the end.
He threw 25 innings all year, so there's definitely an injury there. But again, you can go with that and save a lot of money on him. Plesac was a 12th rounder. They weren't afraid of that. But yeah, Holman has SEC success. Gage Jump, I think, still has some things to unlock there. I think
he had a lot of success this year, which is.
1 year off Tommy John, just like Prager.
Yep. Yeah. And no command issues for either of them.
Which is, again, usually the last thing to come back. The question for me with Prager is there still more velocity to unlock? Because he hasn't
added any.
89-93.
He hasn't had any since he got to. He was supposed to add some. Like, he was a guy that most of us who followed him thought he was going to add it. So that's where it might be a Cleveland special, right? Like, they are the ones who always find it.
If they feel like there's some fruit left to pick off the tree there. I mean, again, his fastball data is really good. It gets a lot of induced vertical break. Like, Garrett Cole is pushing 20 inches. I think I saw on the cards that guy was giving out. Prager was pushing 20 inches of IVB on the fastball, which is really good. So any of these guys in this list, I'd thrilled with. If they really feel like they have to save the money from, not getting their $2 million under slot at pick one that they really want, reportedly. I don't know. And again, before we get out of here, Dan, I'm just going to say we're 72 hours away from the first pick or whatever it is.
You're making me anxious. I got so much to get done.
I know. Sorry. The Guardians know who they're taking. They may not know exactly right now at this moment, but they know because they have to have this money set in the second at 36 and 48.
When the pick is announced,
they want to do some things here.
When the pick is announced, all the conditions have already been. It's very rarely where things change. It's the only time I could think, rumor wise, the only Cleveland guys I can remember things changing with are Stephen Tarpley, Ross Kivett, and Alex Mooney.
Those were not 1-1 picks. Those were not first round picks.
No, it does not happen. One. The only 1-1 guy I can think of in the last decade where something changed was Matt McClain, where he decided he wanted to go to UCLA.
Yeah,
that was
tomorrow's show. Guardians, they're going to score 12 runs against Jack Flaherty. Spencer Howard's going to have a great debut. We'll talk about that, and we'll get into our favorite high school hitting and pitching targets as well.
Thank you for joining us, rating and reviewing, downloading. It helps. Do your part. Tell a friend.
Almost
Someone's
at
like,
3K.
hey,
Subscribe.
yeah, we need 154 more people to get to 3K. So to have someone check us out, thank you all, and go Guardians, go.